The bass pounded through Club Nocturne's walls, vibrating in my chest like a second heartbeat. I pressed myself against the bar, my cheap cocktail dress riding up as I tried to make myself invisible among the Friday night crowd. 23 years old, and this was supposed to be my escape, my fresh start. 3 months of saving tips from double shifts at the diner had bought me exactly one night of pretending I belonged somewhere beautiful. Somewhere, far from the collection notices piling up in my studio apartment, far from my mother's medical bills that never seemed to stop coming, even though she'd been gone for 6 months. The vodka cranberry in my hand was watered down, but I nursed it anyway. Around me, women in designer dresses laughed with easy confidence. Men in suits that cost more than my monthly rent moved through the crowd like sharks, confident and predatory. My roommate Jenna had insisted, practically dragging me out of our apartment with promises that I needed to live. A little. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. The music shifted, something with a heavier beat that made the crowd press closer to the dance floor. I used the moment to slip away from the bar, heading toward what I hoped was a quieter corner. That's when I saw him. Not the man who would change my life. Not yet. First I saw Marcus. My ex-boyfriend stood near the VIP section, his arm around a blonde in a dress that probably cost more than my car. The car I'd sold to help pay for Mom's funeral. Marcus, who dumped me 3 weeks after the funeral because I was too depressing to be around, and he needed someone who could still have fun. Panic seized my chest. I spun away, desperate to avoid eye contact, to avoid the humiliation of him seeing me here alone, clearly out of my element in my discount store dress and drugstore makeup. I wasn't, and watching where I was going. One moment I was moving through the crowd, and the next, I'd stumbled on someone's abandoned heel, my ankle twisting as I pitched forward. Strong hands caught me, steadying me before I could fall completely. "Careful," a voice said, deep and controlled, with an accent I couldn't quite place. Italian, maybe, or somewhere Mediterranean. "I'm so sorry I wasn't." I looked up, and the words died in my throat. The man who'd caught me was devastating. That was the only word for it. Tall, easily over 6 feet, with dark hair styled with careless perfection and a jaw that looked carved from marble. His suit was charcoal gray, fitted so perfectly it had to be custom-made, and his eyes were the color of espresso, dark and intense and currently focused entirely on me. He was seated in a private booth, elevated slightly above the main floor. I'd literally stumbled into VIP territory, into his space, and now his hands were on my waist, steadying me, and I could smell his cologne, something expensive and masculine that made my head swim. "I'm sorry," I repeated, trying to step back. But my ankle screamed in protest, and I wobbled again. His grip tightened, not painfully, but firmly. "You're hurt." "It's nothing. I just twisted it a little. I should." I glanced over my shoulder, and my blood ran cold. Marcus had seen me. Worse, he was moving toward me, that familiar smirk on his face. The one that said he was about to say something cutting disguised as concern, about to humiliate me in front of everyone. Pure instinct took over. Survival instinct, desperation, temporary insanity, whatever you wanted to call it. I sat down on the stranger's lap. The movement was graceless, panicked, completely inappropriate. But his thighs were solid beneath me, his arm already around my waist from catching me, and suddenly I was pressed against his chest, my heart hammering so hard I was sure he could feel it. "I'm so sorry," I whispered frantically, my words tumbling over each other. "My ex is coming over here and I just can't deal with him right now. Please. The stranger's body had gone completely still beneath me. For one horrible moment, I thought he was going to push me off, call security, have me thrown out of the club. I'd officially lost my mind, sitting on a random man's lap like some kind of "stay," he said softly, his voice close to my ear, his breath warm against my skin. "He won't touch you now." The quiet authority in those words sent shivers down my spine. His arm settled more firmly around my waist, not possessive exactly, but protective, claiming. I didn't have time to process what was happening before Marcus reached our table. "Sophia." He used my full name, the one I hated, the one he knew I hated. His smile was sharp as broken glass. "Wow, didn't expect to see you here. This is quite the upgrade from your usual scene." The stranger's hand tightened fractionally on my hip. A warning, maybe. though I couldn't tell if it was directed at me or Marcus. "Do you know this man?" the stranger asked me, his tone polite but carrying an undercurrent of steel. "My ex?" I managed, my voice steadier than I felt. "Marcus." "Ah." The single syllable was loaded with meaning I couldn't interpret. The stranger's attention shifted to Marcus, and something in the air changed. "Your ex-girlfriend appears uncomfortable with your presence." Marcus's smirk faltered. Up close, I could see him really looking at the man I was sitting on for the first time, taking in the expensive suit, the private booth, the two other men seated at the table who I'd barely registered in my panic. Men who looked like they could break Marcus in half without breaking a sweat. "I was just saying hello," Marcus backpedaled, his confidence evaporating. "Didn't mean to interrupt anything." "Then don't let us keep you." The dismissal was absolute, delivered in that same controlled tone that somehow made it impossible to argue. Marcus hesitated for just a second, his gaze flicking between me and the stranger. Then he retreated, disappearing back into the crowd with his blonde companion. I should have moved, should have thanked the stranger for the rescue and removed myself from his lap immediately. But I was frozen, hyper-aware of every point where my body touched his. The solid warmth of his chest against my side, the strength in the arm around my waist, the expensive fabric of his suit jacket beneath my fingers where I'd gripped it for balance. "Thank you," I finally whispered. "I'm so sorry for sitting on you. That was completely inappropriate. I just panicked and—" "Sophie," he interrupted gently, using the shortened version of my name that I preferred. How did he know? Had he heard Marcus use the full version and made the connection? Breathe. I realized I'd been rambling, my words coming faster and faster as anxiety took over. I forced myself to take a slow breath, trying to calm my racing heart. "I'm Nico," he said, his voice still low, meant only for me despite the club's pounding music. "Nico Santoro." He said it like I should recognize the name, like it should mean something. It didn't, but the way the two men at his table straightened slightly when he spoke, it told me it meant something to them. Something significant. "Sophie," I replied unnecessarily, since he already seemed to know. "Sophie Chen, Sophie Chen," he repeated, as if testing how my name felt in his mouth. "And what brings you to Club Nocturne tonight, Sophie, besides avoiding your ex?" "My roommate's idea," I admitted, still not moving from his lap because somehow it felt safer here than anywhere else in the club. "She thinks I work too much and don't go out enough." "Do you? Work too much?" I gave a short laugh. "I work 2 jobs just to keep my head above water, so yes, probably." I don't know why I told him that. Maybe because he was a stranger I'd never see again. Maybe because sitting on his lap had already crossed every boundary of normal social interaction. So what was one more overshare? 2 jobs, Nico repeated thoughtfully. His hand had started moving in slow circles against my hip, the gesture soothing rather than sexual, though my body responded to it anyway. "What do you do?" "I'm a waitress at Lou's Diner during the day, and I clean office buildings 3 nights a week." The words came out defensive, waiting for judgment that I'd learned to expect. The assumption that I was lazy, uneducated, going nowhere. But Nico just nodded. "Honest work. Your mother would be proud." I stiffened. "How did you—" "You mentioned collection notices and medical bills earlier," he said gently. "When you were apologizing, and you have that look, the one people carry when they've recently lost someone important." Tears pricked my eyes, unexpected and unwelcome. I blinked them back furiously. "I'm sorry. I should go. I've already taken up too much of your time." "Stay," he said again, that same soft command that had stopped me before. "Unless you want to leave. But you're safe here, Sophie. Your ex won't approach again. How can you be so sure?" Something flickered in his dark eyes. Amusement, maybe, or something more dangerous. Because men like him recognize when they're outmatched. I should have asked what that meant. Should have questioned why a man I'd just met inspired such immediate deference from others. But I was tired. So tired of being strong. Of fighting every day just to survive. And for this one moment, sitting in the arms of a beautiful stranger who promised safety, I let myself just be. "One of the men with you," I said instead, glancing at the 2 silent figures at the table. "He's been watching the crowd the whole time we've been talking." Nico followed my gaze, then smiled. Actually smiled, the expression transforming his face from merely handsome to absolutely devastating. "You're observant. That's Luca. He's paid to watch for. Threats." "Threats?" The word sent a chill through me. What kind of threats? The kind that come with success, Nico said smoothly, deflecting. I have business interests that make some people competitive. It was a non-answer, but something in his tone told me not to push. Not yet. And the other one? I asked, referring to the second man who'd been sitting silently, a phone in his hand that he'd been checking periodically. Marco, my business partner. Nico's thumb traced a small circle on my hip, a gesture I suspected he wasn't even aware of. They're protective of me, as I am of them. The music shifted again, something slower. Around us, couples moved to the dance floor, pressed close in the dim lighting. I became suddenly acutely aware that I was still sitting on a stranger's lap, that my body was curved against his, that his hand was warm through the thin fabric of my dress. I should let you get back to your evening, I said, but I didn't move. You're not disturbing my evening, Sophie. In fact, you're vastly improving it. His voice dropped lower, intimate. I was having a tedious conversation about shipping schedules before you fell into my arms. Literally. I felt heat rise in my cheeks. I don't usually throw myself at strange men in clubs. No? There was amusement in his voice now. So I'm special? You're convenient, I shot back, surprising myself with the sass. Maybe it was the vodka cranberry, watered down as it was. Maybe it was the relief of not having to deal with Marcus. Maybe it was the way Nico made me feel safe in a way I hadn't felt since before my mother got sick. Nico laughed, a genuine sound that rumbled through his chest and into my body where we were pressed together. Convenient. I've been called many things, Bella, but never convenient. What have you been called? I asked, genuinely curious. His expression shifted, something darker crossing his features. Dangerous, ruthless, unforgiving. He paused, his eyes meeting. Mine, but never to someone sitting in my lap. The reminder of our position sent heat flooding through me. I should move, should thank him and walk away, find Jenna in the crowd and tell her we needed to leave. But I found myself leaning slightly closer instead, drawn by something I couldn't name. Are you? I asked softly. Dangerous, ruthless, unforgiving? Yes, he answered without hesitation, his honesty brutal. But not to you. You don't know me. No, he agreed. But I'd like to. The weight of his words hung between us, heavy with possibility. This was insane. I'd sat on a stranger's lap to avoid my ex, and now we were having an intense conversation like we were the only two people in the club, like the rest of the world had faded away. I should warn you, I said, trying for lightness despite the tension building between us. I'm a mess. I'm broke. I work too much, and my life is held together with duct tape and stubborn refusal to give up. Sophie, Nico said, his hand, cupping my face with surprising gentleness. His thumb brushed my cheekbone, the touch sending electricity through me. Everyone is a mess. The difference is whether you're a mess alone or with someone who wants to help you pick up the pieces. Tears threatened again, but for a different reason this time. When was the last time someone had offered to help? When had anyone suggested I didn't have to carry everything myself? Why are you being so nice to me? I whispered. You don't know me. I literally just sat on you without permission. I could be crazy. His lips curved. Are you crazy? Jury's still out. Then I'll take my chances. His expression grew more serious. The truth, Sophie? From the moment you stumbled into my arms, something in me recognized something in you. Call it instinct, call it fate, call it whatever you want. But I know I want to know you better. And I know I don't want to let you walk away without ensuring you're truly safe. Safe from what? Marcus? I shook my head. He's just my ex. He's not dangerous, just an asshole. Men who make women panic at the sight of them are dangerous. Nico countered, his voice hardening. Maybe not in the way you're thinking, but in ways that matter. He wasn't wrong. Marcus had never hit me, but he'd systematically destroyed my confidence, isolated me from friends, made me feel small and worthless. The emotional scars ran deep. How did you... the way you ran, the fear in your eyes. Nico's thumb brushed my cheek again. I recognize prey when I see it, just as I recognize when someone needs protection. And you're offering to protect me? A complete stranger? I couldn't keep the skepticism from my voice. What's the catch? Smart woman. Approval flickered in his eyes. There's always a catch. Mine is simple. I want to see you again. Tomorrow. For dinner. Somewhere we can actually hear each other speak. My practical side screamed warnings. Don't get involved with a man who has bodyguards. Don't trust. Someone who talks about protection and threats like they're normal. Don't fall for the fantasy when you can barely afford your reality. But my heart, battered as it was, whispered something different. What if? I can't afford dinner anywhere nice, I said honestly. And I won't let you pay. Nico's expression softened. Proud. I respect that. Then let me cook for you. My home tomorrow evening, 7 o'clock. Marco will pick you up. You're home? You're home. I raised an eyebrow. That sounds like either the start of a romance novel or a true crime documentary. He laughed again, and I decided I loved that sound. Loved that I could make this serious, intense man laugh. Romance novel? He promised. I make an excellent ossobuco, and my home has many witnesses, if that makes you feel safer. Witnesses, I repeated. You mean your scary bodyguards? I prefer associates, but yes, I should say no. Every rational thought in my head screamed to decline, to thank him for helping with Marcus and walk away before I got in over my head. Instead, I heard myself say, okay, 7 o'clock. But if you turn out to be a serial killer, I'm going to be very disappointed. Noted. His smile was devastating. Give me your phone. I handed it over without thinking, watching as he added his contact information. When he handed it back, I saw he'd put himself in as simply Nico with a phone number. Text me your address, he said. Marco will be prompt. Prompt is good. I finally, reluctantly, started to slide off his lap. My ankle twinged in protest, reminding me how this whole situation had started. Nico's hand steadied me as I stood, making sure I had my balance before releasing me. Even that simple gesture felt protective. Careful. Thank you, I said, meaning it. For everything. The rescue, the conversation, the lap-sitting thing he supplied, amusement dancing in his eyes. That too. I started to turn away, but his voice stopped me. Sophie. I looked back. Wear something comfortable tomorrow, and bring your appetite. I promise you won't be disappointed. The way he said it, the promise in his voice, sent heat pooling low in my stomach. This was dangerous. Not in the way he'd warned, but in the way that made me want to lean into it anyway. I'll see you tomorrow, Nico. I walked away before I could change my mind, my twisted ankle protesting every step. But I didn't look back. Couldn't look back, because if I did, I might not leave at all. I found Jenna near the dance floor, her eyes wide as I approached. Oh my God, she breathed, grabbing my arm. Who was that? What do you mean? The guy whose lap you were sitting on. Sophie, do you know who that is? Cold dread settled in my stomach. Should I? Jenna pulled out her phone, quickly typing. She showed me the screen, a society page article about a new restaurant opening. In the photo, Nico stood with several other men in expensive suits, his face serious, commanding. The caption read, Nico Santoro, prominent businessman and heir to the Santoro family interests. At the opening of Club Nocturne, connected, Jenna whispered. Sophie, the Santoros basically run half this city. They're connected, if you know what I mean. I stared at the photo. Mafia, organized crime, exactly the kind of danger I should be running from. But all I could think about was the way he'd said, stay. The gentleness in his touch, the promise of safety in his voice. I'd sat on a mafia boss's lap by mistake, and tomorrow, I was going to have dinner with him anyway. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Nico's face. The intensity in his dark eyes when he'd told me to stay. The way his hand had felt against my hip, protective and possessive all at once. The casual authority with which he'd dismissed Marcus, like my ex was nothing more than an annoying insect. By 3 a.m, I'd convinced myself to cancel. By 4, I'd talked myself back into going. By 5, when my alarm went, off for my morning shift at Lou's diner, I still had no idea what I was doing. You look like hell, Lou observed when I stumbled into the kitchen at 6:30, tying my apron with fumbling fingers. Didn't sleep much. Hot date keep you up? He waggled his bushy eyebrows, trying to make me smile. If only he knew. Something like that. The morning rush was brutal. A steady stream of construction workers and early commuters who wanted coffee, eggs, and minimal conversation. Normally I thrived in the chaos, the constant movement keeping my mind from dwelling on medical bills and collection notices. Today, it couldn't keep my thoughts from circling back to Nico. The Santoros basically run half this city. Jenna's words echoed in my head as I refilled coffee cups and delivered plates of hash browns. What did that even mean? I'd lived in this city my whole life and never paid attention to organized crime beyond what I saw in movies. The Mafia felt like something from another era, not something that existed in the real world of my daily struggles. But Nico existed. His bodyguards existed. The deference everyone showed him existed. And I'd agreed to have dinner at his home. "Sophie, order up." Lou's voice cut through my spiraling thoughts. I grabbed the plates and delivered them to a table of regulars, forcing a smile I didn't feel. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Against my better judgment, I checked it during a brief lull. Unknown number. "Good morning, Sophie. This is Marco. Mr. Santoro asked me to confirm your address for this evening's pickup. He also wanted to ensure your ankle is healing properly." My stomach did a strange flip. He'd remembered my twisted ankle, had thought to check on me even though he'd probably never see me again if I chickened out. I typed back quickly. 2847 Riverside Avenue, Apt 3B. "Ankle is fine. Thank you for asking." The response came almost immediately. "Excellent. I'll arrive at 6:45 p.m., Mr. Santoro prefers punctuality." I bet he did. Everything about Nico screamed control, precision, careful orchestration of his world. The question was whether I was brave enough, or stupid enough, to step into that world willingly. My shift at the diner ended at 2. I had exactly 4 hours before I needed to be ready, and I spent most of them standing in front of my closet in despair. "Wear something comfortable," Nico had said. But what did comfortable mean to a man who wore custom suits and had bodyguards? My wardrobe options were painfully limited. "Just wear the jeans and that green sweater," Jenna said from my doorway, startling me. I hadn't heard her come home from her own shift at the bookstore. "You look good in green. Brings out your eyes." "I look like I'm going to study at a coffee shop. I not have dinner with—" I lowered my voice, even though we were alone. "With someone like him. Sophie." Jenna came fully into my room, sitting on my bed with the air of someone preparing for a serious conversation. "Are you sure about this? I know he's gorgeous and he helped you with Marcus, but the Santoros aren't just wealthy businessmen. They're dangerous." "You think I don't know that?" I sank down beside her, my hands twisting in my lap. I spent half the night reading articles about the family, about investigations that never went anywhere, witnesses who disappeared, businesses that are definitely fronts for something illegal. And you're still going. It wasn't a question. Jenna knew me too well. "I know it's stupid," I said quietly. "I know I should be running in the opposite direction. But Jenna, when I was sitting there with him, I felt safe for the first time since Mom died. Not because he's dangerous to other people, but because he made it clear he wouldn't let anyone hurt me. People who need that much protection usually have a lot of enemies. I know. Those enemies don't discriminate between actual girlfriends and random women who sat on his lap to avoid their ex. I know that too." Jenna sighed, reaching over to squeeze my hand. "Then wear the green sweater and the dark jeans. And Sophie, keep your phone on you. Text me every hour. If I don't hear from you by 10, I'm calling the police. The police who are probably on his payroll? Then I'll call the FBI." Despite everything, I smiled. "Deal." At 6:30, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, assessing the results of an hour's worth of effort. The green sweater did bring out the amber in my eyes. I'd left my hair down in loose waves, applied minimal makeup, and added the small gold hoops my mother had given me for my 21st birthday. Simple. Comfortable. Hopefully not embarrassingly underdressed. My phone buzzed at exactly 6:45. "Marco, I'm outside your building, Miss Chen. Black Mercedes. Take your time." I grabbed my purse, a worn leather bag that had seen better days, and headed for the door. Jenna intercepted me in our tiny living room. "Text me," she ordered, pulling me into a fierce hug. "Every hour. And if anything feels wrong, anything at all, you leave. I don't care if you have to fake a medical emergency, or just walk out mid-conversation. You leave. I will. I promise. And Sophie?" She pulled back, her expression serious. "If he's really one of the good ones, if he treats you right, then I'm happy for you. You deserve someone who sees how special you are. Just be careful, okay? Your heart has been through enough." My throat tightened with emotion. "I love you, you know that?" "I know. Now go before you're late. You said he values punctuality." The Mercedes was exactly where Marco said it would be, idling at the curb of my rundown apartment building. It looked obscenely expensive against the backdrop of cracked sidewalks and graffiti-tagged walls. Marco stepped out as I approached, and I got my first good look at him in proper lighting. He was probably in his late 30s, built like he spent serious time in the gym, with dark hair cropped short and eyes that constantly scanned our surroundings. He wore a dark suit that probably cost more than 3 months of my rent. "Miss Chen." He opened the back door with a slight nod. "It's a pleasure to meet you properly." "Just Sophie is fine," I said, climbing into the car. The interior smelled of leather and something expensive, maybe air freshener designed specifically for luxury vehicles. Marco slid into the driver's seat and pulled smoothly into traffic. "Mr. Santoro wanted me to inform you that dinner will be ready at 7:30, but he's prepared drinks and appetizers for 7 if you're hungry sooner." He didn't have to go to so much trouble. In the rearview mirror, I saw Marco's lips curve slightly. Mr. Santoro doesn't consider it trouble when it comes to someone he's interested in. Heat flooded my cheeks. "We only met last night. He barely knows me. With respect, Miss Sophie, Mr. Santoro doesn't invite people to his home lightly. The fact that you're in this car tells me he sees something in you worth knowing better." I didn't know how to respond to that, so I focused on the view outside the window. We were heading away from my neighborhood in the South End, driving through increasingly upscale areas. The apartment buildings gave way to townhouses, then to actual houses with yards, then finally to a neighborhood I'd only ever seen in magazines. "Where exactly does he live?" I asked as we turned onto a tree-lined street with mansions set back from the road. "Blackwood Heights. The Santoro family has owned property here for 3 generations. Of course they had. Because apparently I'd sat on the lap of old money Mafia royalty. The Mercedes turned into a circular driveway, and I felt my jaw drop despite my best efforts to play it cool. The house, if you could call something that size a house, was a masterpiece of classical architecture. 3 stories of cream-colored stone, with tall windows that glowed warmly in the gathering dusk, perfectly manicured. Gardens. A fountain in the center of the driveway that probably cost more than I'd make in 5 years. "Holy shit," I whispered. "Mr. Santoro appreciates beautiful things," Marco said diplomatically as he opened my door. "The house has been in his family since his grandfather immigrated from Sicily." I stepped out on shaking legs, suddenly feeling completely out of my depth. What was I doing here? I was a waitress who cleaned office buildings. I had student loan debt from 3 semesters of community college before I'd had to drop out to care for my mother. I wore Target jeans. "Sophie." Nico's voice pulled my attention to the house's entrance. He stood in the doorway, and my breath caught despite my anxiety. He'd changed from the suit he'd worn at the club into dark slacks and a charcoal sweater that clung to broad shoulders. More casual, but somehow even more devastating. His dark hair was slightly mussed, as if he'd been running his hands through it, and his expression when he saw me was warm in a way that made my knees weak. "You came," he said, walking toward me with that fluid grace I remembered from the club. "I wasn't entirely certain you would." "I almost didn't," I admitted, because honesty seemed important with him. "Your house is terrifying." He laughed, reaching me and taking my hand in his. His palm was warm, calloused in places that suggested he did more than sign papers all day. "It's just a house, Bella. 4 walls and furniture like anywhere else. 4 walls made of imported Italian marble, probably. Stone, actually. My grandfather was a stonemason before he made his fortune." Nico's thumb brushed across my knuckles. "Come inside. Let me prove to you that money doesn't make a place less welcoming." He led me through the front entrance into a foyer that belonged in a museum. Soaring ceilings, a chandelier that scattered rainbows across marble floors, a staircase that curved up to the 2nd floor like something from a movie. But Nico didn't pause to let me gawk. He guided me through a formal living room that I barely registered, down a hallway lined with what looked like actual oil paintings, and finally into a kitchen that made me stop in my tracks. It was enormous, all gleaming stainless steel and warm wood, with a massive island in the center and professional-grade appliances. But what struck me most was how lived in it felt. Copper pots hung from a rack above the stove. Fresh herbs grew in pots on the windowsill. The scent of something delicious filled the air, rich and savory. "You actually cook," I said, surprised despite his promise. "Did you think I'd lie about making ossobuco?" He moved to the stove, checking something in a large pot. "My grandmother insisted all her grandchildren learn to cook properly. Said a man who couldn't feed himself was barely a man at all." The casual mention of his grandmother, the domestic scene of him cooking in this massive kitchen, made him seem more human, less like a dangerous crime lord, and more like just a man who happened to have excellent culinary skills and a really nice house. Can I help? I offered, needing something to do with my hands. You can keep me company. He gestured to a stool at the island. And tell me about your day. How was your ankle this morning? I settled onto the stool, surprised he'd remembered. Fine. Barely noticed it during my shift. Your shift at Lou's diner. He'd remembered that too. He was stirring something in the pot, his movements confident and practiced. How long have you worked there? 3 years, since my mom got sick. Nico's hand stilled on the wooden spoon. He turned to face me fully, his expression serious. I'm sorry for your loss. Everyone says that, I said. Not meanly, just truthfully. But most people don't mean it. They just want to say the right thing so they can move on to a less depressing topic. I mean it. He moved around the island, standing close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. Losing a parent changes you, makes you grow up faster than you should have to. I know because I lost both of mine when I was 24. The admission startled me. I'm sorry. That must have been devastating, he finished. Terrifying. I was barely more than a boy, and suddenly I was responsible for everything they'd built, everyone who depended on them. His hand came up to cup my face, the gesture gentle. So, when I say I understand, Sophie, I truly do. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. How did they die? I asked softly. If you don't mind me asking. Something dark flickered across his features. A car accident. At least, that's what the official report said. But you don't believe it. I know it wasn't an accident. His voice hardened. But that's a conversation for another time. Tonight is, and about getting to know each other, not dwelling on tragedy. He moved back to the stove, and I sensed the subject was closed. But the brief glimpse into his pain, into the loss that had shaped him, made me feel less alone, less like I was the only one carrying grief. Tell me something happy, Nico said, his back to me as he worked. What did you want to be before life intervened? A psychologist, I answered without hesitation. I wanted to understand why people do what they do, why some people survive trauma and others are destroyed by it, how we carry pain and still find ways to live. That's not just a career aspiration. That's a calling. Maybe. I traced patterns on the marble countertop. But callings don't pay bills or make student loans disappear. What if they could? Nico turned back to me, something intense in his expression. What if I told you I could make those obstacles disappear? That you could finish your degree? Pursue your calling? Alarm bells rang in my head. I don't want your money, Nico. I barely know you. I'm not offering charity. He moved closer again, bracketing me against the island with his arms on either side of me. Not trapping, just close. I'm offering possibility, a chance to see what this could be between us without financial stress drowning out everything else. Why? Why? I demanded, needing to understand. Why would you do that for a stranger who sat on your lap by accident? His lips curved. You think it was an accident? That out of everyone in that club, you happened to stumble into my booth, onto my lap specifically? It wasn't? Perhaps it was fate. His hand came up to brush hair behind my ear. Or perhaps I saw you earlier in the evening, noticed you trying to make yourself invisible at the bar, and made certain you'd have somewhere safe to land when your ex appeared. I stared at him, my mind racing. You set that up? I simply created an opportunity. You chose to take it. His dark eyes held mine, just as, you're choosing to be here now. I'm not forcing anything, Sophie. I'm offering a partnership. You allow me to help with your financial burdens, and in return, you allow me the pleasure of your company. That sounds like, I couldn't finish the sentence, like I was being bought, like some kind of transaction, like two people helping each other, Nico finished firmly. You need financial relief. I need. He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. Something real. Someone who sees me as a man, not as a name or a reputation. And if I say no? His smile was sad. Then we have a lovely dinner. Marco drives you home, and you go back to your life. I won't contact you again if that's what you want. But Sophie? His thumb brushed my bottom lip, the touch sending heat through my entire body. I really hope you don't say no. I should have. Every practical bone in my body screamed to thank him for dinner and walk away before I got in deeper. But when I opened my mouth, different. Words came out. What would this partnership look like exactly? Triumph flashed in his eyes, quickly masked. You continue working if you wish, or you don't. Your choice. Your student loans are paid off. You enroll in school for the spring semester. Your rent and utilities are handled. In exchange, you attend functions with me when I ask. You let me take you to dinner. You spend time with me. So I'd be your, what? Your girlfriend? Eventually, I hope. For now, let's say you're someone I'm courting. The old-fashioned word sounded natural in his accent. Someone I want to know better, to protect, to care for. And when you get bored, when you realize I'm just a broke waitress with no interesting stories and a mountain of problems, his expression turned fierce. You're not just anything, Sophie Chen. You're a survivor, a woman who works 2 jobs to honor her mother's memory and keep her head above water. A woman brave enough to take a chance on a stranger when she had every reason to run. His hand cupped my face. That's not boring. That's extraordinary. God help me. I wanted to believe him. Wanted to take the lifeline he was offering and stop drowning in debt and exhaustion. But what would it cost me in the end? I need to think about it, I whispered. Of course. He stepped back, giving me space. Think while we eat. No pressure, no expectations. Just dinner between 2 people who find each other interesting. He served the osso buco at a small table in a breakfast nook overlooking the gardens. The food was incredible. Fall off the bone tender with a rich sauce that made me close my eyes in pleasure. Nico watched me eat with satisfaction, refilling my wine glass and keeping the conversation flowing. We talked about everything and nothing. Our favorite books, places we wanted to travel, childhood memories that made us who we were. He told me about growing up with the weight of family expectations, about his younger sister who was studying art in Florence. I told him about my mother's laugh, about the way she'd sung while cooking, about how the silence in my apartment sometimes felt suffocating. By the time Marco drove me home 3 hours later, I was no closer to a decision, but I was completely, thoroughly charmed. Nico walked me to the car, his hand resting at the small of my back. Thank you for tonight, I said, turning to face him in the circle of the driveway. For dinner, for the conversation, for not pushing. Thank you for taking a chance on me. He leaned down, pressing a soft kiss to my forehead. Think about my offer, Sophie. But more than that, think about whether you feel something when you're with me, because I feel it, this pull between us, and I don't want to let it go. I feel it too, I admitted. That's what scares me. Don't be scared, Bella. He helped me into the car, and I watched through the rear window as he stood in the driveway, watching us leave. Even from a distance, his presence was commanding, magnetic. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. My phone buzzed. A text from Jenna? I typed back. Home in 20. Still alive. Need to talk. Another buzz, this time from an unknown number. I hope I didn't scare you off. I'd very much like to see you again. And I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the reply button. One word could change everything. One decision could pull me into a world I didn't understand, with dangers I couldn't predict, or it could give me a chance at something I'd never dared to hope for. I typed, tomorrow, coffee, somewhere public. I need to ask you questions before I decide anything. His response came immediately. Anywhere you want. I'm at your service, Bella. That was the problem, I realized as Marco pulled up to my building. I didn't want him at my service. I wanted him as an equal partner, despite the vast gulf between our worlds. The question was whether that was even possible. The coffee shop I chose was deliberately unglamorous. A hole in the wall, placed 3 blocks from my apartment, where the espresso machine hissed like a dying dragon, and the furniture looked like it had been salvaged from someone's garage sale. It was the opposite of Nico's world, and that was exactly the point. I needed to see if he could exist in mine before I even considered entering his. He arrived exactly on time, and I watched through the window as he stepped out of a different car than last night, a sleek black Audi that still screamed money, but was at least slightly less conspicuous than the Mercedes. Marco was with him, naturally, though the bodyguard stayed outside, positioning himself where he could watch both the entrance and the street. Nico spotted me immediately, his face breaking into a smile that did dangerous things to my heartbeat. He wore dark jeans and a leather jacket over a simple white t-shirt, looking somehow even more devastating in casual clothes than he had in his expensive suit or cooking in his kitchen. Every woman in the coffee shop tracked his movement as he walked toward my corner table. I couldn't blame them. He moved like a predator, all controlled grace and coiled power. Sophie. He said my name like a prayer as he slid into the chair across from me. Thank you for agreeing to meet. I said I had questions, then ask. He leaned back, completely at ease, despite the suspicious looks from the barista and the way the other customers kept glancing our way. I'll answer anything I can. I took a sip of my coffee, gathering courage. What exactly do the Santoros do? And don't give me vague answers about business interests. I spent last night researching your family, Nico. I want the truth. Something flickered in his eyes. Respect, maybe. The truth is complicated. Try me. I'm smarter than I look. His lips curved. You look very intelligent. So that's saying something. He sobered quickly. My family has diverse holdings. Restaurants, nightclubs, construction companies, import-export businesses. Most are completely legitimate. Most. He agreed. Some operations exist in gray areas. Gambling, for instance, in establishments where such activities aren't technically legal. Loans to individuals who can't access traditional banking. Protection services for businesses in certain neighborhoods. Protection from what? From people who would harm them. From other families who might want to move into their territory. From themselves, sometimes. He met my gaze steadily. I won't lie to you, Sophie. My family's history includes violence. Includes things I'm not proud of. But I'm working to change that. To bring us into legitimate enterprises while maintaining the loyalty and respect that 3 generations built. So, you're like, Mafia light? Organized crime with a conscience? He laughed, the sound drawing more stares. Something like that. My grandfather came from Sicily with nothing. He did what he had to do to survive, to build something for his children. My father continued that work, expanded it. When I inherited everything, I made a choice to evolve, to keep what works and eliminate what doesn't. And the things that don't work are drugs, human trafficking, anything that preys on the vulnerable rather than protecting them. His voice hardened. I've made enemies by drawing those lines. Other families think I'm weak, that I'm betraying tradition. But I don't care. I won't profit from human suffering. The conviction in his voice sent a shiver through me. This wasn't a man making empty promises to impress a woman. This was someone who'd thought deeply about his choices and made peace with them. What about violence? I asked quietly. You said your family's history includes it. What about your present? Nico was quiet for a long moment, his jaw tightening. I won't lie to you, he said finally. Yes, sometimes. When someone threatens what's mine, when diplomatic solutions fail, when protection requires force. His eyes met mine. But I'm not a sadist, Sophie. I don't enjoy it. It's a tool, used sparingly, when other options are exhausted. Have you killed people? The question hung between us, sharp and unavoidable. Around us, the coffee shop continued its morning bustle, completely unaware of the conversation happening in the corner. Yes. The single word was heavy with weight I couldn't fully understand. Not often, not without cause. But yes, I should have stood up right then. Should have walked away from this beautiful, dangerous man who'd just admitted to murder over coffee and pastries. But instead, I found myself asking, why are you telling me this? You could have lied, made yourself sound better. Because if you choose me, Sophie, you need to know what you're choosing. He leaned forward, his intensity focused entirely on me. I could paint myself as some kind of Robin Hood, stealing from the rich to give to the poor. I could minimize the darkness in my world, make it seem romantic and exciting, but that would be a disservice to both of us. So you're giving me reasons to run. I'm giving you the truth. What you do with it is your choice. His hand reached across the table, stopping just short of touching mine. But I hope you'll see that truth includes this. I meant what I said about protecting you, about wanting something real, about being someone different with you than I am in the rest of my life. I stared at his hand, so close to mine, trembling slightly with the desire to close that small distance. I don't understand why you want me specifically. You could have anyone. Women who grew up in your world, who understand the rules, who wouldn't need everything explained, because they would want me for what I represent, for my name, my money, my power. His voice softened. You wanted me for safety, for protection from a man who hurt you. That's honest, raw, real. And when I held you last night in my kitchen, When we talked about loss and dreams and possibility, you didn't see the Santoro air. You saw me. Just Nico. Damn him for saying exactly the right thing. For understanding the loneliness I'd been carrying since my mother died. The exhaustion of always being strong, always surviving, never thriving. If I say yes, I began carefully. If I accept your help and agree to this partnership, what happens when you realize I'm not what you thought? When the novelty wears off, and you remember I'm just extraordinary, he interrupted firmly. That's what you are, Sophie. Not just anything. And I don't want you because you're novel. I want you because something in me recognized something in you. Because you're brave and strong and determined to survive no matter what life throws at you. His hand finally closed over mine. Those qualities don't fade, Bella. They only grow. Stronger. I turned my hand over, lacing my fingers through his. The connection felt electric, inevitable, like touching him completed some circuit I hadn't known was incomplete. I'm terrified, I whispered. Good. Fear means you're smart enough to understand the risks. His thumb brushed across my knuckles. But Sophie? Being terrified and doing it anyway? That's courage. Before I could respond, the bell above the coffee shop door chimed. Marco entered quickly, his expression tight with urgency. He moved to our table with swift efficiency, leaning down to murmur something in Nico's ear. I watched Nico's expression transform. The warmth disappeared, replaced by something cold and lethal. His hand tightened on mine for just a moment before he released it, standing with fluid grace. I need to handle something, he said, his voice controlled but hard. Marco will stay with you. What's wrong? Nothing you need to worry about. A business matter that requires my attention, he cupped. My face briefly, his touch gentle despite the danger radiating from him. Think about what we discussed. I'll call you later. Then he was gone, striding out of the coffee shop with the kind of purposeful movement that made people instinctively step aside. Through the window, I watched him get into the Audi, which pulled away with deliberate speed. Marco slid into the seat Nico had vacated, his eyes scanning the coffee shop before settling on me. He'll be fine, he said quietly. This is just business. What kind of business? The kind that's best handled quickly and decisively. Marco's expression remained neutral. Don't worry, Miss Sophie. Mr. Santoro is very good at what he does. That's what I was afraid of. 3 hours later, I was at Lou's diner, mechanically refilling coffee cups and delivering orders while my mind replayed the morning's conversation. Nico's admissions. His honesty about violence and death. The way he'd looked at me like I was something precious despite having known me for less than 48 hours. My phone buzzed in my apron pocket during a brief lull. I checked it, expecting Jenna asking about last night's dinner. Instead, it was a number I didn't recognize. Sophie, this is Marcus. We need to talk. It's urgent. My blood ran cold. I hadn't heard from Marcus since Nico had dismissed him at the club. Why would he be contacting me now? Another text came through immediately. It's about your new boyfriend. You're in danger. Meet me at Riverside Park in an hour. Come alone. My hands trembled as I stared at the screen. This felt wrong. Marcus had never cared about my safety when we were together. Why would he care now? But what if he was telling the truth? What if whatever business Nico was handling had put me in someone's crosshairs? I typed back. How did you get this number? His response was immediate. That doesn't matter. What matters is that you're involved with very dangerous people. I'm trying to help you. Sophie, order up. Lou's voice cut through my spiraling thoughts. I shoved my phone back in my pocket and grabbed the plates, forcing myself to smile at the customers. But my mind was racing. Should I tell Nico about Marcus's text? Should I meet him to find out what he knew? Should I ignore it completely? My shift ended at 4. By then, I'd received 3 more texts from Marcus, each more urgent than the last. The final one included a photo that made my stomach drop. It was me, leaving my apartment building that morning. Someone had been watching me, following me. My hands shook as I dialed Nico's number. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. I tried again. Same result. I called Marco instead. He answered on the first ring. Miss Sophie, is everything all right? I need to talk to Nico. Now. It's important. He's currently unavailable, but I can relay a message. Marcus, my ex, he's been texting me. He says I'm in danger, that I need to meet him. Marco. He sent me a photo of my apartment. Someone's been following me. Silence on the other end, heavy and ominous. Then, where are you right now? Lou's diner. My shift just ended. Stay there. Don't go anywhere. I'm sending someone to get you immediately. Marco, what's going on? Miss Sophie, please, just stay where you are. Lock yourself in the back office if possible. Don't go outside. Don't talk to anyone you don't know. Can you do that for me? The urgency in his voice sent fear skittering down my spine. Yes, I can do that. Good. Someone will be there in less than 10 minutes. Trust them, okay? They'll bring you somewhere safe. The line went dead. I stood frozen in the diner's kitchen, my heart hammering against my ribs. Lou looked at me with concern. Sophie, you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. I need to use your office, I managed. Please, just for a few minutes. He didn't question it, just handed me the key. You in some kind of trouble? I don't know. Maybe. Probably. I took the key, with shaking hands. If a man comes looking for me, a man who isn't, don't let anyone back here except the person who comes to get me, okay? No matter what they say. Lou's expression turned serious. He'd run this diner for 30 years in a neighborhood that wasn't always friendly. He understood danger when he heard it. Go on. I'll stand watch. I locked myself in the tiny office, my back pressed against the door, phone clutched in my hand. Should I call the police? But what would I say? That my ex-boyfriend texted me and I was scared? That the man I'd had dinner with last night was handling business, and now someone was following me? The police would think I was paranoid. Or worse, they'd start asking questions about Nico, about the Santoros, and I'd be dragged into something I didn't understand. 7 minutes later, Lou knocked on the door. Sophie, there's a woman here, says Marco sent her. I cracked the door open. Standing in the kitchen was a woman in her early 30s, petite and beautiful with dark hair pulled back in a severe bun. She wore all black, and something about the way she carried herself screamed professional competence. Miss Chen, she said calmly. My name is Elena. Marco asked me to bring you somewhere safe until Mr. Santoro can speak with you. How do I know you're really from him? She pulled out her phone, showing me a text from Marco's number with my description and the diner's address. He said you'd be smart enough to verify. He also said to tell you that Mr. Santoro takes his promises seriously, especially the one about keeping you safe. The knot in my chest loosened slightly. Where are you taking me? Mr. Santoro's home. It's the most secure location we have. I grabbed my purse and followed Elena through the diner. Lou gave me a concerned look, but I managed a reassuring smile I didn't feel. I'll explain later. Outside, Elena guided me to a black SUV with tinted windows. Another man sat in the driver's seat, equally professional and alert. As we pulled away from the diner, I watched the familiar streets of my neighborhood slide past, wondering if I was making a terrible mistake. But what choice did I have? Someone was following me. Marcus knew where I lived, and Nico, the only person who'd promised to protect me, was unreachable. The drive to Blackwood Heights felt longer than it had last night. Every car that pulled close made me tense. Every stoplight felt like an opportunity for danger to catch up. Miss Chen, Elena said from the front seat, her eyes meeting mine in the rearview mirror. I need you to understand something. What's happening right now isn't random. Your ex-boyfriend is being used to get to Mr. Santoro. To get to you specifically because Mr. Santoro has shown interest in protecting you. Used by who? We're still determining that. But when someone in Mr. Santoro's position takes a woman under his protection, it makes her valuable. To his allies as a sign of his affection. To his enemies as a potential weakness. The words hit me like a physical blow. I've made him weak. No. Elena's voice was firm. You've made him care about something other than business. That's not weakness. But it does require adjustment, increased security, vigilance, trust. Trust in what? In him, in us, in the fact that we will keep you safe no matter what it costs. We pulled through the gates of Nico's estate, and I felt a strange sense of relief. The house looked the same as last night, warm and welcoming despite its size. But now I understood it wasn't just a home. It was a fortress. Elena led me inside, past the formal rooms I remembered, up the grand staircase to the second floor. She opened a door to reveal a beautiful bedroom decorated in soft blues and creams. This is the guest suite, she explained. You'll stay here until Mr. Santoro returns. There's a bathroom through that door. Feel free to shower, rest, whatever you need. I'll be right outside if you need anything. Am I a prisoner? You're protected. Elena's expression softened slightly. I know this is frightening, Miss Chen. But you're safer here than anywhere else in the city right now. Mr. Santoro will explain everything when he arrives." She left, closing the door softly behind her. I heard the subtle click of a lock, though I wasn't sure if it was to keep me in or keep others out. I sank onto the bed, my mind reeling. Less than 48 hours ago, I'd been a nobody, a waitress struggling to survive, whose biggest problem was making rent. Now I was locked in a mansion, under protection from threats I didn't understand, waiting for a man who'd admitted to killing people to come explain why someone was following me. My phone buzzed. Another text from Marcus. "You didn't show. Big mistake, Sophie. The people looking for you aren't as patient as I am." Then, impossibly, another text from a different unknown number. "Sophie Chen. You have something that belongs to us. Return it, within 24 hours, or we'll take it by force. Your boyfriend won't always be there to protect you." I stared at the message, confusion mixing with fear. Something that belonged to them? I didn't have anything. I owned a used car I'd already sold, some thrift store furniture, and enough debt to drown in. What could they possibly think I had? The door opened without warning. I jumped to my feet, my heart in my throat. But it was Nico. He looked different than this morning. Dangerous. There was blood on his knuckles. His jaw was tight with barely controlled fury, and his eyes held something cold and lethal that made me instinctively step back. Then he saw me, really saw me, and the coldness shattered. He crossed the room in 3 long strides and pulled me into his arms. "You're safe." He breathed against my hair, his body shaking slightly. Thank God. When Marco told me about the texts, about the photo, "Nico, what's happening? Who's following me? What do they think I have?" He pulled back just enough to frame my face with his hands. The blood on his knuckles stood out stark against my skin, but I found I didn't care. "Someone is trying to use you to get to me," he said, his voice tight with controlled rage. "They think you're my weakness, my vulnerability, and they're going to learn that threatening you was the biggest mistake they could have made." The text said, "I have something that belongs to them. They're lying, trying to confuse you, to make you doubt me." His thumb brushed my cheekbone. "Sophie, I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Even though you've known me less than 2 days, even though I've told you I'm dangerous, even though every logical part of your brain is screaming to run?" I stared into his dark eyes, seeing the fear beneath the fury. Fear for me, for my safety. "Yes," I whispered. "I trust you." Something fierce and possessive flashed across his face. He leaned down, his forehead resting against mine. "Then stay here. Let me protect you, while I handle this. And when it's over, when you're truly safe, we'll talk about what happens next. About us. And if I can't stay?" I asked, needing to know. "If this is too much, too dangerous, then I'll make sure you disappear so completely that no one will ever find you." His voice was rough with emotion. "I'll give you a new name, a new city, enough money to finish your degree and start over. I'll let you go if that's what you need, Sophie. But I won't let anyone hurt you. That's not negotiable." Tears pricked my eyes. "You'd really let me go? If it kept you safe?" "Yes." His lips brushed my forehead. "But I'd spend the rest of my life missing you." The admission broke something open inside me. This beautiful, dangerous man who barely knew me was willing to sacrifice his own happiness for my safety, was willing to be honest about the darkness in his world while showing me the light he kept hidden beneath. I rose on my tiptoes and kissed him. It wasn't planned, wasn't calculated, just a need to connect, to show him that I wasn't running, that I was choosing him despite the fear, despite the danger, despite everything my logical mind said I should do. Nico made a sound low in his throat, his arms tightening around me as he kissed me back. This wasn't the gentle kiss from last night. This was desperate, claiming a promise and a plea all at once. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his eyes were dark with desire and something deeper. "Stay with me," he whispered. "Not just tonight, but for as long as you'll have me. Let me show you that this world doesn't have to destroy beautiful things, that we can build something real despite the darkness." "I'm still terrified," I admitted. "Good." His smile was soft. "That means you're smart enough to survive what comes next." Outside the window, the sun was setting over the estate's gardens, painting everything in shades of gold and amber. Somewhere in the city, people who meant me harm were planning their next move. Marcus was sending threatening texts. Danger lurked in shadows I couldn't see. But here, in Nico's arms, I felt safer than I had in years. Sometimes the most dangerous choice was the only one worth making, and sometimes, sitting on a stranger's lap by mistake led to exactly where you were meant to be all along. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.